Alright, hello everybody, I'm the Super27 and welcome to yet another Dokkan battle video. I wanted to try to do something a little bit different to stir up yet another discussion. I've mentioned this in passing in several of my other videos, just like dropping what I think the ranking for all the Dokkan Fest TURs have been this year. Since I've mentioned it so many times, I figured I might as well make a video about it, because I feel like there could be a lot of opinions that could potentially be swayed, or I don't know, because I probably have some controversial opinions on how I rank these TURs, because this has really been a year of LRs. Every LR release pretty much has been phenomenal in one way or another, except for maybe AGL Ultimate Gohan. He's the only one who's a little bit disappointing in my opinion. I definitely highly overrated him on his initial release, but let's go ahead and not waste any time, because we do have a lot of things that we got to discuss today. So we're going to start off with which I feel like is a very easy decision, being Frieza in last place. Now, Frieza has several issues. So let's start off with the leader skill. So, Planetary Destruction and Space Traveling Warriors, that's actually a pretty good leader skill right there, and then an extra 30% to Inhuman Deeds and Terrifying Conquerors. The main problem is pretty much all of these teams are dead. Planetary Destruction hasn't been relevant for a very long time. Space Traveling Warriors hasn't really been relevant since, like, the Metal Cooler era, and the same thing with Inhuman Deeds and Terrifying Conquerors. And if we're looking down here just a little bit further, in his passive, he gets an extra 20% defense and 10% chance to crit per Terrifying Conqueror category on the team. So, why is Terrifying Conquerors the 30% then and not one of the 170s? Because it's possible that, you know, Planetary Destruction characters like Roshi is on here, like Jackie Chun is on here. There are characters that aren't on Terrifying Conquerors, like Super Easy A Kid Buu, who aren't on the category that you potentially want to run this character with. So I feel like that's just kind of a blunder right there. These could be swapped, and I feel like it really wouldn't be that big of a deal. That right there in of itself is a little bit weird, and just his team isn't very strong, which is always a problem. This guy has no help, and he doesn't help his team either. It would be one thing if he was surrounded by a bunch of units who couldn't really do a whole lot, but he could carry. That can happen very easily. Like a character like Beast Gohan is so good, you could run him on a team full of just fraudulent characters, and you could potentially still get a W just because of how overwhelmingly powerful he is. But if we're looking here, this is a character who actually struggles against super attacks, and struggles against going into slot 1. So he can't lock down slot 1. No other real units on his team can. I know some people might be like, well, what about Dodoria? Dodoria is not a very great side banner unit. Unfortunately, they don't even link too well together, if I'm not mistaken. And if we're looking at this guy's super attack effect, it is pretty devastating. This is just like an evolution of what Majunior was last year. And Majunior was really good in last year's meta, but it doesn't really work, especially now that we're having super attack bosses who super in slot 1 guaranteed for 5.4 million, which is, you know, pretty problematic. But he does stack attack, which is very good. He gets 30% defense for one turn, and then he does immense damage, and he does greatly lower enemy attack. This is pretty huge, which would also be super nice if he could go into slot 1. But if we're looking at what he's doing, he has an entrance animation that makes him very powerful for his first couple of turns, when there are 2 more Space Traveling Warrior category allies on the rotation, which isn't bad. But he's getting this. This is very low. Again, I've been on the record saying I think if you're under 200% to start of turn stats this year, that is considerably low. So this is a 150% at the start of turn. I know he gets an extra 150 on super, which is, I mean, he's doubling his stats, which is crazy, but can't go into slot 1. When no other units on his team can really go into slot 1. And if there's like an AoE boss or anything, this guy's going to just get folded in half, unfortunately. And then pretty much the rest of his passive is just giving him extra offensive power, which can work if this team had its own defensive core. The real issue of this character is that, number one, he fumbles as a leader. We can say that pretty wholeheartedly. I do think that this is a blunder, not having these swapped or having these swapped. I think that is a blunder. Like, this is nice because he leads Space Traveling Warriors, but he only adds to Terrifying Conquerors. So, like, let's say you're trying to run a Space Traveling Warrior team that wouldn't have anything. Like, what would be, like, some good characters off just the top here? Well, none really recently have released. I suppose, like, this Hit is pretty good. Vados is actually very, very good, being a dodging support unit. But, like, look at this. We haven't really gotten any, like, new major releases. Like, I mean, I guess you could argue Ginyu, but Ginyu doesn't buff this team at all. So I don't know, there's just not the best leader skill, and then doesn't help the team. The team, if you're unfamiliar, most Terrifying Conquerors, most Planetary Destruction, most Space Traveling Warrior characters, they all do insane amounts of damage. Like, people, when they think of Terrifying Conquerors, they're going to think of Majunior, who launches 1 billion attacks each turn, getting up to like 1 million defense and just really incredibly high attack stats. Cooler Cooler is a character who just, like, his whole purpose is to get an 18 key, get an offensive stack, and then launch a bunch of additionals, all of which to have a 30% chance of being a super. So he launches, like, 1 billion attacks a turn. If we go a little bit further, like, this is a character right here who, again, launches a bunch of additionals. This is a free-to-play. This is an Easy A who does just 1 attack per turn, generally, but it's very devastatingly powerful. So damage isn't what this team needs help with, although it probably does need help with it since a lot of those characters are being out-aged at this point, but that's neither here nor there. They needed a good slot 1. Now, if he could go into slot 1 and still did all of this, but he was just restricted to Terrifying Conquerors, for example, that would be fantastic. But as it is, he's just in a very awkward spot. There is still part of the year. Obviously, you know, we're going into Worldwide soon. I know some people have mentioned it could be, like, Planet Namek Saga again, where we could get, like, a Kaioken Goku and a Final Form Frieza. I mean, I would be down for that. We could get GT Saga. It doesn't really matter. But there is still time in this year for this character to get some help that they need. It would be really unfortunate if this was, like, the Hellfighter 17 from last year, Kale from last year. We haven't really seen that a lot. Normally, during all of these major celebrations, like, the team becomes, like, a top-tier threat for a very long time, or a very meta-relevant team. But Terrifying Conquerors, Space Dragon Warriors, it just didn't get that this year with his celebration. But there is still time, because, you know, if it is Namek Saga for Worldwide, there is the potential for Fraud Form Frieza to Easy A, who would be a huge help for this character. So there is still time, but we're quickly running out of that time, and this could be like another S tier Kid Buu situation where by the time that they become good, it's just a little too late for them. So I feel like that's a pretty comfortable spot, dropping them right there. Now, this next one might be a little bit controversial. I'm putting Angel SSJ3. Now, Angel SSJ3 was a unit who, on release, I thought was the best TUR in the game, and after using him a lot, I have actually come to kind of hate this guy. So let's go ahead and just really quickly discuss why. He does have a lot of benefits. He cannot get caught at the start of fights, which is huge. So for his first couple of turns, like, he has 90% damage reduction turn 1, turn 3 he has 60% damage reduction, the turn after that he has 30, and then after that he loses all of that, but he can build up some more damage reduction here by performing super attacks. With each super attack performed, he gets an extra 5% damage reduction. When he's in slot 1, he does also get guard. Let's see, where can I find that? Right here. So when there's another Majin Buu Saga category ally attacking within the same turn, he gets 100% defense and guard in slot 1, or an extra 100% attack and launches a guaranteed additional in slot 2 or 3. Very, very good. He does also have the high chance to do a nullification of a key boss, and then counter with tremendous power. So there are a lot of bosses where you're able to just kind of throw this guy wherever in front of a super attack, and 50% of the time that it will do 0 to you, and you'll do some decent damage back to the boss, which isn't too bad. His super attack effects aren't crazy, but they're not bad either. He gets 50% attack and defense for 1 turn immense damage to the enemy, and he has a 50% chance to stun. So up against, like, Selmax, this would probably be one of the better characters for that fight, because it is just so devastating at the start. But once you get deep into the fight, then you're able to keep him stunned and seal locked. This guy could absolutely keep him locked down. Plus, he has type advantage. Right now, being AGL is one of the better types to be in the game, actually, which is a pretty big buff to this guy. But where do his flaws start to lie? So let's go ahead here. Again, let's get this out of the way. 150 at the start of turn. I think that is low. I understand that on his super attack effect, he does double his stats. I do still think that is low. He does have a medium chance to crit, which is nice. And for his first couple of turns, he has an extra higher chance to dodge, or what is it? Yeah, an extra 50% right here. So he's actually at an 80% chance to crit while his intro is up, which is nice. He does launch a guaranteed additional that has a 70% chance to be a super, which again is nice. But this is where his flaw comes in. Majin Buu Saga. Now, Majin Buu Saga is a very meta-relevant team. It's one of the better teams in the game, arguably. But this guy fails as a leader. So Majin Buu Saga, obviously he leads it, so it's good that it's in his passive. Otherworld Warriors is just a joke of a category. Like, it is not good. It is a pathetic category. Anytime there's an Otherworld, like, warrior mission, I always cringe a little bit. And he does also have Accelerated Battle, which is a very good category. It has one of my favorite units currently in the game, being S tier Kefla. And a lot of other good units like MUI Goku, Tech MUI. He has a lot of options. But you have to be very restrictive, either in your team building with this character, or how you have your rotations. This is a guy who's pretty much always stuck on a main rotation. And if you're running Majin Buu Saga, the issue of the category is, most of the time, all these characters are very defensive. Like, this is a very defensive character, this is a very defensive character, defensive, 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 defensive. The list goes down. You're not doing a whole lot of damage on this team. You're going very slow. So the leader of the team should fulfill a niche that the other team members don't have. And I don't believe that this guy has that. So if you're putting him into slot 1 for his first couple of turns, again, he's essentially untouchable. 60+% damage reduction and guard, plus his extra 100% defense right here. That is good, but if you have him rainbowed in slot 1, he's launching like 5 to 7 millions. Now, I don't know if I need to tell you, that's not good. That's not. Even with this, I don't think that he is like an offensive threat by any means. So you need to put him into slot 2 if you want to do that. What you can do for his first couple of turns, because again, he just has the insane amount of damage reduction. He doesn't need the guard post super attack. But what do you do when you only have the 30%? You have to put him in slot 1 so he gets all these extra buffs. But at that point, you're doing no damage. In Majin Buu Saga, so many of these fights, they drag on forever. So you're going to run out of your damage reduction pretty quickly if you're running him on his specific team. So you can swap in some accelerated battle units. Because again, Kefla, MUI, Tech MUI, very offensive powerhouse units that can help fulfill a niche that this guy has. But again, you're going to have to run those as floaters, or you're always going to have to keep a Majin Buu Saga category character in slot 1 or 2 if you are going to be floating him. And I'm just not a fan of that design. You have to play like chess with this character. Like, again, he's so good, but his design does not fit the meta very well, in my opinion. Again, having to go into slot 2 if you want to go fast, because you want to go fast with this guy. Because once he runs out of all of this, he does become a fish. I will say that 30% damage reduction and guard, he can no longer lock down slot 1, unless you're going up against like a Ki Blast super boss, in which case you have a 50% chance of surviving it. I'm just not the biggest fan. He does have a very powerful active skill, which, again, you need another Majin Buu Saga category ally in the same turn. It's not even on the team. It's the same turn. Turn 4, massively, temporarily raises attack, does ultimate damage, and then he gets guaranteed crits for the turn. So the idea for it is that you wait until your intro completely wears off, which is basically like his third rotation. You pop the active skill, and then hopefully you end that turn. But I don't really see footage of this guy doing that anymore. Like, yeah, in the Majin Buu Saga Red Zone, except for, like, Kid Buu, because this guy was a fish against Kid Buu for some reason, you could quickly go through a lot of these events, and, like, I would say probably for, like, the Gogeta event, you would be able to easily go through this guy, because not only would he have type advantage, just naturally having lower HP. What is this guy going to do against Goku and Frieza? I don't really know. I think he's just very subtly being pushed away. And he doesn't really help a lot of teams. Like, he's on a lot of teams. Like, you can say, like, oh, but he's so versatile. Not really, because you're not running his specific leader skill, like if you're trying to run this guy on Roshi's team, or any other, like, major DFE or LR this year. You have to have a character with a leader skill that would fit another Majin Buu Saga character. Now, again, Majin Buu Saga has some, like, very powerful meta-relevant units, but I think the extreme side of the team is much better than the super side of the team. Because on the super side of the team, you do have characters like STR Vegeta, who I'm a much bigger fan of than a lot of other people are probably. And then you have probably the best EZA still in the game, being Tech Ultimate Gohan. But if we look a little bit further, like, this is a dodging unit, this is a decent damage reduction unit. Like, this unit is fine in slot 2, this is a floater, like, this is a floater. So you have to keep, so if you're running floaters, you have to keep them on a main rotation. And I just don't know. But if we look at the extreme side of things, things get much more favorable. So I don't know. I do initially thought, like, when we were, like, reading this guy's kit, I didn't really think that this would be the biggest deal. Because I was like, oh, well, he's going to be a god. The problem is that he only leads Majin Buu Saga, essentially. You can slide in some accelerated battles, but again, you're going to be floating them. And then having Kamehameha and Time Limit as its extra 30%, I feel like that was a pretty poor choice. Time Limit is another, like, bad category. Now, it's good giving bad categories good leaders, but again, he essentially only has a 170. Because again, this is a dead category who doesn't benefit him at all anywhere in his passive. Same with Accelerated Battle. And then Kamehameha and Time Limit, they're okay, I guess. So yeah, this one might be controversial, but I'm not a very big fan of him at all. Now, moving right along up into our next spot, I actually don't remember who I put here. Yes, okay. Right here, boom. We have Rose. Now, Rose, on release, would have definitely been probably the weakest out of all of these guys, but he did get a buff, which was good. I don't know if it was a Matsu thinking the character would be too strong, and that's why after he saw the global players, like, the outrage, that's why he buffed them, because he was like, oh, I thought the character would be too good. I was wrong, so once JP gets it, we'll give them a buff, and then global will get that buff later on. Or, I don't know if his coding wasn't ready when he dropped on global and we had to get a global exclusive, but at that point I would have just rather not gotten a global exclusive and gotten the good character just later on, as opposed to kind of what happened with him, like, in retrospect. I don't know, I feel like he was very poorly handled. But let's go ahead and discuss what Rose is offering for the table. I do think right now on global he is going to be the best Super Boss's leader. I do actually think he eclipses Broly specifically on super bosses, because so many super bosses characters that we're going to see going forward are big bad bosses. A link that this guy does not have. So flooding the team with as many big bad bosses characters as possible is a little bit better. And not to like spoil anything, we're going to talk about it in just a moment, but you can actually get this guy's domain a turn earlier, meaning he's just slightly more versatile in my opinion. But if we're looking at the team right now, it is pretty much just full of Goku Blacks. Like obviously we have Zamasu, this character is kind of being power crept out. Fusion Zamasu is still very, very, very good. Broly, Chile, and Limo, they are a big bad bosses character as well. Once we get, what is his name? Selmax. Selmax is another big bad bosses character. So I think just definitively right now he fits the role the best as the leader. I do think Broly is a better leader as a whole because he also leads full power and transformation boost, which are very, very good. But for the time being, this guy I think probably does take the role. He does also lead corroded body and mind, which isn't like the biggest thing ever, I suppose, because you're going to pretty much just run this guy on super bosses. Again, it's kind of one of these unfortunate things where he only has like a 170, but he has 3 pretty powerful 30% Realm of Gods, Accelerated Battle, or Exploding Rage. You'll be able to get a lot of super bosses on here, primarily like the Tech Fusion Zamasu, AGL Fusion Zamasu, Int Sub Easy Ace Fusion Zamasu, characters like those fit really, really well on this guy's 200%. So let's look at what he's doing. He gets 200% stats at the start of turn. Very good. That's what I think every character this year, bare minimum, should get. He does have guaranteed guard for his entry turn. I do like when they give this to characters for their first turn. They have an extra protection ability. Tech Ultimate Gohan gets 30% damage reduction. AGL MUI gets the guaranteed dodge, stuff like that. I do think that's actually a pretty good addition. That way you can like float your rotations, or you can put a character where they probably shouldn't go, because they have this little extra cushion. I do think that is nice. Now this is kind of probably his biggest flaw, which is restricting him to one team, but I don't think that's the biggest deal, because again, corroded body and mind, it's not really like a good leader for it. But he gets 6% damage reduction per super bosses category ally, up to 30%. So that's 5 super bosses. So technically you can sub in some other units. There only has to be 5 of your 7. I think this would include him as well as the friend unit. So you can, again, you can have some like wibbly wobbly things that you would be able to do with that. He gets an additional 30% damage reduction before he attacks, so 60% at the start of turn plus guard turn 1. It's pretty good. He launches a guaranteed attack per Rainbow Key Sphere obtained. Now, this does not have a chance to be a super attack. It is literally just a normal. He launches a additional attack that has a high chance of being a super attack. He launches an additional every time this character performs 5 or more attacks in battle, up to once per turn. He launches an additional super attack every time this character performs 10 or more attacks in battle, up to once per turn. He gets an additional 30% attack and defense with each attack performed during the turn. Super bosses category allies get 2 ki within the same turn after he receives an attack. And then he has a 70% chance to nullify ki blast super attacks directed at this character. So this is yet another just one of these like damage-oriented characters. But he does have this right here, which if you do get just a bunch of normals, he is still building up. Now, if we look at his super attack effect, he does just get 30% defense, attack and defense for 1 turn and immense damage. He doesn't have any extra gimmicks. So he can become just like a very impressive stats character. I do think just having 30% is a little bit low, but having this extra cushion is nice, so he can go into slot 1. I don't know if he's the best slot 1 character. I mean, at the start of a fight, yeah, absolutely. 60% damage reduction and guard turn 1. Very, 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 very good. And then once he gets all of these built up as well, that would be nice, but obviously at that point you're losing the damage reduction. So you're giving up damage reduction for the potential to have a lot of stats, which can work out in your favor, cannot. Because he is a slow build of a character, so if we're looking at this realistically, you have to give him a lot of rainbow orbs. In his base form, he does not create rainbow orbs, and one of the biggest problems on super bosses, even on the JP version, is that so many characters are orb hungry. Like, let's just go ahead real quick. Like, this is an orb hungry character, 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 orb hungry, orb hungry, orb hungry, orb hungry, and it doesn't get much better. So by adding yet another variable, especially when he doesn't create his own orbs, can be problematic. Not the best addition to have in a unit, but if you're able to give him a lot of rainbow orbs, you're going to be able to proc this, and then I'm pretty sure the first time you proc this, it procs every single turn from there on, because it's launch an additional super attack every time the character performs 5 or more attacks in battle, up to once per turn. So I think the second you do 5 attacks, every single turn after that, you also get this buff. The same goes for this. So I know people would probably see that I'm like, want to flood additional in this guy. I would think crit and then dodge. This is actually a unit who I think can take advantage of crit because he doesn't have crit anywhere built into his passive. And then dodge for whenever, you know, he gets frauded out, you don't get a lot of supers, and he can potentially be a little bit of a fish. But overall, I feel like he has a very fun design. Like, this is one of these units who, like, has a huge, like, difference in their potential. Because, like, their first super attack they're going to do in the turn is going to be, like a 3 million. Very, very pathetic. But, like, this attack right here, they could be up to, like, a 17 million, for example. So they just have explosive potential. Also, having this is pretty huge. This does give them a 70% chance against Ki Blast Supers, which are pretty relevant in the meta right now. Not on some of the hardest fights, but there are a lot of boss fights where there is a Ki Blast. So giving this guy a 70% chance to live that is quite good. And he does also have a domain. So domains are kind of the bane of every character's existence right now until we get the domain update, because there are a lot of Super Bosses characters. Fusion's Zamasu, this character, and Broly, who all have a domain that they need to be really, really good. So until we get that update, it's going to be a little bit of a issue. But as I said, I feel like this one's not too terrible, because you are actually able to do it a turn before Broly. So it can be activated when all allies are Super Bosses on turn 4 or turn 6 from the start of battle. So even if you're running him not in a full Super Bosses team, this isn't like from the start of turn. This is start of battle, so this is just flat turn 6. So not the worst thing ever. He creates the domain for 4 turns, and then Super Bosses category allies get 2 ki for 4 turns. And then there's an extra effect for the domain effect. All Super Bosses, enemies, and allies get 10% attack, plus an additional 10% attack and defense for those who are extreme class. Again, he's also Big Bad Bosses. He's on a lot of categories, but again, he's kind of stuck to Super Bosses. So then he can transform into, like, the clones or whatever. Now, once the domain goes away, you will actually revert back into this space form. So there is a little bit of strategy, a little bit of mind games that you would have to play with a character like this, knowing when is the right time to pop it. That way you would have your 2 rotations of the character where he's at his like maximum potential, and then you're going to revert. So trying to save this as deep into a fight can be good, or if it's one of these shorter events, you can pop it pretty easily, and you don't really have to worry about any of that. So he's getting 222% attack and defense. Not a huge buff, only an extra 22% to stats, but we'll take what we can get. He does get super effective against all types, which is nice. Crit would have been better, but that is still nice. He gets 66% damage reduction before he attacks. He randomly changes a certain type of key sphere, physical excluded, to rainbow key spheres, so that is nice. He's now creating his own orbs in this base form. He launches an additional attack that has a rare chance of being a super attack per key sphere obtained. This is a 10% chance, which isn't big, but if they gave him a medium, this would probably be like the best TUR in the game, like unironically. If he had a higher chance for all of these attacks to be supers, because then you could actually launch like 7 supers in one turn, 8 supers in a turn, or more. He gets a guaranteed additional with a 70% chance of being a super. He launches an additional super attack every time this character performs 5 or more attacks in battle, up to once per turn. He launches an additional super attack, and when 10 or more attacks have been performed in battle, up to once per turn. And then he gets an extra 33% attack and defense within the same turn with each attack performed. Now, if I'm not mistaken, these actually carry over from base form to his transformed form. So if you're able to get this in his base form, you are also able to get this in his transformed form. And then he's also getting just an extra, this may seem very small, but an extra 3% to stats to both can be really huge. That can be the difference between living and not living. Now, the problem is he loses all of his damage reduction in this form, and he does also lose his nullification. So that is a little problematic. I'm not the hugest fan of that, because at least before you would still have your 30% damage reduction and your stats. Now you're just relying on pure stats, and he's not getting like the biggest stat increase ever. Again, he'll be able to live pretty much any normal in the game, because like he's not going to slot 1 realistically. I guess he could go into slot 1. He doesn't have guard or anything, but 66% damage reduction is still pretty big. Plus, he's going to have big bad bosses, so there's a potential that he could eat some super attacks. Probably not well, but he could eat them. Which I guess a lot of super bosses characters at the moment can't do. Like Broly can't do that unless he's transformed. Fusion Zamasu can't do that unless he's transformed. Kefla would have to dodge, so he does have that, I guess. This is probably like your best slot 1 option, unfortunately. And then after that, he's just relying on raw stats. His raw stats are going to be very good, because again, he's getting just right here. If you perform 7 attacks in a turn, I don't know what 7 times 33 is. That's an extra 210+% right there. So you're essentially doubling what you're doing if you're able to get that. He's creating his own orb, so it shouldn't be the most difficult, but there will be times that you do just get absolutely fucked by rainbow orb changing, and you're not able to get a lot of orbs after that. So you can run into some issues. His super attack effect also isn't the greatest. He's getting 50% attack and only 30% defense for 1 turn, immense damage, and he does greatly lower defense, so that is huge. He can maybe nuke some of these bosses where you're able to actually debuff them that way. I don't understand why he couldn't just greatly raise both, especially when like defense is going to be a little bit more crucial in a character like this, since again he has no damage reduction. His pure defensive mechanic is just going to be his raw stats. His raw stats can be very impressive, though. Again, like, his first super attack is going to be like a 3, 4, 5 million. And then by the time you finish, this guy can launch like a 33 million, depending on how many supers you're able to actually get with this 10% chance. So again, this is like a very fun character. When he pops off, or you may feel like, oh, wow, this guy sucks because I never get these super attacks. There's a lot of, like, variables in this character, and that's why I feel pretty comfortable putting him where I did, just because consistency is a little bit more nice. But I do think that since he is probably the best Super Bosses leader on Global, as well as one of the better units on the Super Bosses team on the JP side of things, I think he more than deserves to be a little bit higher than some of the other units. Now this one might also be a little bit controversial. I feel like a lot of people owe this guy an apology. A lot of people were saying this guy was mid, he was bad, he was awful, he was horrendous. His side banner unit was better than him. I feel like a lot of people deserve to give Roshi a little bit of an apology. So what does Roshi do so good? Why am I such a big fan of this character? Well, for starters, let's start off with his leader skill. He's a 200% to, I know it's Peachy Gal. This is Peppy Gal. Now, Peppy Gal, if you don't know, is like notoriously not a very great category. That is not what I clicked on. Notoriously not like the best category out there. But it does always have a lot of characters who are just flooded with support. It would be this one. No, that's Earthling. Oh, great heavens. Is this Peppy Gal? Nope, that is... I don't even know what that is. Hold on. Just a moment, chat. That is full power. Is it going to be literally the last one I click on? That is Bondmaster Disciple. That is Turtle School. Oh, because he's not on it himself. That's right. That does make sense as to why it wasn't showing up. Let's see. Hold on. Are there any characters I could click on like really quickly that could pull it up? Yeah, we'll do this. And then here we go. So Peppy Gal is a category that's kind of flooded with like a lot of support characters. Like this is a ridiculous support character. Bulma is a ridiculous support character. You have characters who can have 77% damage reduction. It's full of like a lot of these more like niche abilities, but like we have like some very good niche attackers like Kefla, or we have some very good damage or like support characters like Bunny Girl Bulma and Bulma herself. So giving them a 200% is very good. Now, it's pretty funny that he is obviously on the category, but he doesn't lead it himself. That's why I was clicking on these for no reason. Feel free to make fun of me for that in the comments. But giving a category like that at 200% when he himself is very, very solid, and he is a support character in of himself, if you run this character, Bunny Girl Bulma and Bulma, you're flooding a team, like he's giving 50%, Bunny Girl Bulma is giving 50%, regular Bulma, LR Bulma, she's giving 37% attack and defense for 2 turns. Chilai, if you choose to run Chilai, she gives 33% attack and defense for 1 turn. You're just flooding this team with support, so even though these characters might not be the most meta-relevant, we're just giving them more stats. We're giving them so much, like, of a cushion that they can, like, all the other units on the team are helping lift each other up, which is amazing, especially since, you know, we're going to be getting the Peppy Gal banner within, I think at the start of next week on the 12th on the JP version. So all of these units could potentially be getting way more meta relevant. Like we could get a Mai, we could get a RANT fan, we could get a new launch, we could get a Bulla, we could get so many potential characters that are going to buff this team that much more, especially for like support characters. And speaking of support characters, one of my favorite characters, again, it is STR Kefla. She is a stacker, she's my darling, she never frauds me, literally ever. I know she's only 50%, but she dodges more than 100% chance to dodge characters. I am so serious, I love her kit so much. I've seen footage of her on Roshi's team being able to get up to a 63 million super attack stat. Because obviously she's stacking herself. Roshi is giving her 50% for 1 turn. Bunny Girl Bulma is giving her 50 for 1 turn. And again, if you're using like LR Bulma, that's 37% for 2 turns. If you're using this kid's active skill, that's an extra 30%. Like the whole team is just flooded with support, and that's just the Peppy Gal side of things. Now, if we're looking at it, he does, he's built a little bit wonky, but it's built in a wonky, but like in a good way. So he does lead Peppy Gal 200%. And then after that, it is Turtle School and Dragon Ball Saga, 170 to stats, and then additional to Bondmaster Disciple and Kamehameha, which is going to get ourselves the Gokus. So in his passive, he does need 2 other Turtle School category allies. So you just run this guy with Tech MUI and then AGL MUI Goku, and then you just flood the team with as many other Peppy Gals as possible. That's not a very hard team build to do at all. especially since both are very good. Once we get a better Goku, you can flood in those two different Gokus, but the two best Gokus in the game are MUI and Tech MUI, just those really good dodging units. So let's like actually like really dive and see what he does. So he has an entrance animation which gives him 30% damage reduction for 7 turns. This is probably why people are favorable of him, because he can lose this very early on. And this as well, I do, again, credit where credit is due, this is low. 150 at the start of turn, I think that's low, I'm not a fan of that. But when there are 2 or more Turtle School category allies on the user's team, he gets an extra 3 ki, 20% damage reduction, and 150% attack and defense when performing a super, and he always launches a guaranteed additional super. So as long as you have 2 Gokus on the team, you're going to be getting that. Now, I know I've seen some people running like Path the Power Kid Goku on this guy's team. I'm not the biggest fan of that. At the start of this year, I thought Path the Power had like a chance to be like a top 20 unit, but he is just not built for what these bosses are doing anymore, unfortunately. Looking again a little bit further into what Roshi's doing, this is why you want to flood his team with Peppy Gals. He gets an extra 82% attack and defense for each Peppy Gal category ally on the team. Or excuse me, on the rotation. And if it's a Bulma character, he gets an extra 82% attack, and he gets a 50% chance to crit. And then he gives all allies who are on the Turtle School or Peppy Gal category 2 ki and 50% to stat. So again, he's just a nice supporting unit. This is a unit who you can actually float. Like, there is a strategy I've seen where people put Tech MUI slot 1, LR Bulma slot 2, float this guy. Next rotation, AGL MUI Goku, Bunny Girl Bulma, Roshi. And then you just have another Peppy Gal unit who gives support Chilai. I mean, you could run sub-EZA Ribrianne because she's an 88% chance to dodge unit. Just cycle in these different floaters and you just float Roshi, which is like a very relevant strategy. Again, we already slightly discussed his active skill. Let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper. So it can be activated from his 3rd turn from start of battle when HP is 70% or below, or from the 5th turn from the start of battle. Very easy condition to do. And it recovers 50% HP, gives all allies 3 ki for 1 turn, and then to get all allies 30% attack and defense for 1 turn, which is insane. 80% support for 1 turn. If you're running 2 of these guys, you can do that twice. Add that on top of your Bunny Girl Bulma support, Chilai support, LR Bulma support. We're going to be getting 2 more units who could potentially be crazy EZA supports as well. This guy is huge. And he's also a unit super attack, so he has 3 different supers. So his first super, which is just like his basic one, raises attack and defense by 30% for 1 turn and does colossal damage or immense damage to the enemy. He has a unit super right here, which can be performed with a Youth Goku or a Youth Krillin. You're not going to see this a lot, or at least I don't think you should. Stacks attack, greatly raises defense for 1 turn, immense damage to the enemy, and then a 50% chance to stun. And then he has his Kamehameha, which can be activated with a Bulma on the rotation. Stacks attack, greatly raises defense for 1 turn, immense damage to the enemy, and then a 70% chance to stun them, which is nice. So I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on this guy. I think he's just a crazy support unit on a team that's already flooded with support. So I feel like he is very, 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 very good. All right, next we have Toppo, who is shortly, or supposedly, going to be coming to the global version of the game in just 5 days. Now, I am a much bigger fan of this character than I feel like a lot of people are. I feel like he's very similar to Tech Ultimate Gohan, and then he's just Tech Ultimate Gohan with a transformation that has an immense amount of damage reduction and guaranteed crit. So let's really quickly dive into what this guy can do. He leads Special Pose or Tournament Participants, 3 ki, 170 stats, and then an extra 30% to Defenders of Justice, Space Traveling Warriors, or Final Trump card. Not a half bad leader skill, not bad at all, because Special Pose, like, this was the celebration where, like, all the DFEs were getting flooded with support. Like, this guy has Super EZA SSJ3 Gotenks, he has Ginyu, he has all his side banner units, he has Cataplusula, if you really want to bust him out. His team is just very cohesive, and now you can even add on characters like LR Jiren, EZA Tech Jiren. You can run in characters like MUI, you can run MUI, Tech MUI, SSBE, you can run a lot of other characters on here, which is very, very good. So, and he's also a Super Bosses character who can be run on Super Bosses. He doesn't necessarily need his intro, but he's a lot better with it. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and discuss what his intro can do. So, from his entry turn, when there are 2 or more Special Pose or Defender of Justice category allies on the player's team, he gets, 11% damage reduction and guard for 3 turns. So, that's pretty good. That's how he kind of locks down slot 1. He gets an extra 200 stats at the start of turn. Whenever he does a super attack, he gets an extra 150% attack, 20% damage reduction right here, so these stack, so he's at 31% damage reduction. When he has over 50% HP, he will turn Int Key Spheres into Rainbow Key Spheres. Special Pose, Defender of Justice category allies get 1 key and 30% to stats. When he's in slot 1, he gets an extra 200% defense, guards all attacks, and he gets an extra defense plus 50% for 1 turn after he receives an attack. And then when he's in slot 2 or 3, he gets an extra 100% attack and defense when he performs a super. Again, he just literally locks down slot 1. This guy is basically just Tech Ultimate Gohan. I mean, he doesn't stack in his base form or anything, but he's fulfilling a very similar role. He goes into slot 1, he can create his own orbs. He doesn't need orbs, but just orb changing is nice. It does have a little bit of an error, because obviously you can't really reliably run the gammas with him, because he's changing the orb that they want to collect the most into Rainbow Key Sphere. So while you can run the gammas on his team, they do kind of clash heads every now and then. But 31% damage reduction for his first couple of turns. Guaranteed guard in slot 1, 200% extra defense as well, 50% defense after he gets hit once. So if he gets hit once, and then the next attack is a super, he's going to eat it really, really, really well. Also just giving like nice support to pretty much his team. Very, very well designed base form. If we're looking at his super attack, he gets 50% attack and defense for 1 turn and does immense damage to the enemy. Nothing crazy, but that's not bad at all. And he does also have a transformation. Now, again, this is a transformation that you really have to, like, hold on to. You don't want to just pop this willy-nilly. So it can be activated from the 4th turn from the start of battle. Again, start of battle, not start of turn. Very, very good. When there's an ally in the Special Pose or Defender of Justice category attacking the same turn, or turn 6 from the start of battle. Both are very easy to do. So if you're running this guy on a pure Super Bosses team, you have him in slot 1, you're missing, like, his damage reduction or whatever. But you're just running him in slot 1. No Defender of Justice, nothing else. You're still able to get this pretty reliably. Turn 6 isn't like a bad transformation condition at all. And when you transform into God Toppo, this guy is a monster. He is a monster. He does have a flaw, and that's why I feel like a lot of people kind of underrate him, because he does have a very abusable flaw. But if you kind of work around that, or if you give him like full dodge, you are able to work around it. So let's go ahead and talk about what this guy does. So he gets 3 key and 300 to stats, an extra 100% to stats at the start of turn. He gets an extra 250% attack when he performs an attack, an extra 100% defense when he receives an attack. He transforms Int Key Spheres into Rainbow Key Spheres. He has Guaranteed Guard. He has 80% damage reduction, but he loses 8% each time he gets hit, up to 60. So you know what SSJ 3 Angel Goku is doing in turn 1? This guy can do the exact same thing on turn 7, turn 8, turn 9 even. Be essentially untouchable for a rotation. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then for the first turn after arriving, he has a guaranteed beam super nullification, and then after that is a 50% chance to nullify beam supers targeted at this character, which is super nice. So if you're going into a boss, like if you have a scouter and you know that there's a beam super, you're able to pop this, and then after that, there's a 50% chance of him doing that from every other turn. And he does also have yet another active skill, which can, let's see. Oh, it has the exact same transformation condition. The exact same. So it can be pretty much as soon as you transform into him, you're able to launch this immediately. Temporarily raise attack, deals ultimate damage to the enemy, and then he gets guaranteed crits for the rest of the battle. Don't give this guy crit. You want to give him additional, because he doesn't have any additionals built anywhere into his passive. So you won't really get to see take like advantage of this too often, but primarily you want to give him dodge. That way you don't have to like miss out on 8%. Because like 20% damage reduction in guard is pretty low, even with all of this. If you have him in slot 1, he gets hit 1 time. Maybe he could like eat a super, not well, but he could do it. But essentially having an untouchable turn deep into a lot of these fights is pretty freaking good. Giving him guaranteed crit is really good. I feel like it is a no-brainer. You want to give this guy like 25 dodge, 17 additional, something like that, and you'll be absolutely cooking. And then his new super attack, he increases attack for 1 turn. Let's see, increases attack by a large amount for 1 turn. So I'm assuming this is greatly raised attack, increased defense, and then colossal damage to the enemy. Very, very good. I'm a very big fan of Toppo. He's just a very good, like, slot 1 unit. We really haven't seen too many slot 1 units or reliable slot 1 units in this video so far. So by giving him just that versatility, and he's on good teams, you can run him on, like, Tech MUI's Universal Survival Saga team if you really wanted to do that. Again, he doesn't need his intro. He's much better with it, but you can run him on Super Boss. You can run him on all these different teams. I guess we can actually pull it up. You can run him on all these teams, and he's a slot 1. So let's see. This is Universal Survival Saga. Obviously, again, he's a great slot 1 for that. This is Transformation Boost. Super Bosses. This is Realm of God. You get the picture. This is Mastered Evolution. Just all these teams. This guy can lock down slot 1 when some of these teams don't have a good slot 1 option. So, again, very, very good. All right. So the final two, who do you guys think is going to be number one? Let me know in the comment section down below if you agree with my list or if you disagree, but let's go ahead and get our number one and our number two slots up here. So Vegeta. I do think Vegeta is the second best TUR in the game, so let's go ahead and talk about what he does. So he leads Vegeta Family or Super Saiyans, 3 key, 170 stats, and then an additional 30 to Pure Saiyans, Battle of Wits, or Mastered Evolution. Very, very good. Unfortunately, I probably would have preferred if it was Pure Saiyans, and then we swapped that for this, maybe. That way we could have a little bit more versatile options on his team, because his team, it's pretty good, like, but Super Saiyans isn't necessarily where, like, it used to be when we had this guy ruling the game. Like, we're looking at it right now, obviously, you can have him, you can have these two characters, you can have this character, you can run Kefla, again, any opportunity that you can to run Kefla, I think that you should. But he's very solid, like a very solid leader, but he's also on a lot of categories, so you can run him on a wide variety of different teams. Transformation Boost would probably be the best one because you can run him with Broly. So let's dive into what this guy does in his base form. Only 150 stats. Again, got to call that out. I think that's very low. He gets Guaranteed Guard. He has 18% damage reduction. And then he launches a additional super attack for 3 turns from his entry turn. The more HP remaining, when the character attacks first in the turn, the greater the attack boost, up to 150%. The more HP when this character receives an attack for the first time in the turn, the greater the defensive boost, up to 150%. So it's a little bit weird. So you're very HP reliant on this guy. He has like some weirder mechanics, but he kind of makes up for that once he transforms. He gets an extra 31% defense with each attack received, up to 80%. And then he launches an additional attack that has a great chance of being a super attack when there is an ally whose name includes Goku attacking in the same turn, or if there is a Goku enemy. So you may be looking at this and like, okay, well, that's not very great. I mean, guard, low stats, very minimal damage reduction. Like, what kind of makes up for it? Well, he is a stacker. If you don't know, this is just Tech Ultimate Gohan, but on steroids. This guy is doing everything Tech Ultimate Gohan is doing, except he's not greatly stacking. That is literally the only difference. But he stacks attack and defense and then immense damage to the enemy. He also steals. So right here, so if you're up against like Selmax or all these other characters, you're able to keep him stunned and seal blocked. This guy has that capability, which is pretty major. So you can even greed out some stacks once like this wears away. You could potentially keep him in this base form if you wanted to try to greed out as many stacks as possible. He does have the potential to launch a lot of additionals in the turn as well. So you have like your starter turn 12 key. For his first 3 turns, you're launching another guaranteed one. If you have a Goku on the turn, that's another one with a 70% chance of being a super. And then you have your hidden potential system. So potentially you could get 4 offensive and defensive stacks with this guy per turn if like RNG goes your way. And right now, one of the hardest fights in the game being the Goku and Frieza fight. If you made it all the way to the end and you didn't transform this guy, hey, you would get a guaranteed right there. That'd be very rare. That'd be silly. Don't do that. That would be a bad idea. But you have that potential to do that, especially now since we're getting like super class enemies for the first time in a long time who are being like the difficult content. We will see more and more difficult content Gokus pop up every now and then. So that's actually a pretty common ability to get now, I would argue. But he does also have a transformation, and this is where this guy goes from good to great, which can be activated when HP is 18% or more from the 3rd turn from the start of battle. This is very easy to get. I don't think I've ever seen anyone ever not have this ability to transform up. But when you transform, you are now Super Saiyan Vegeta, who gets 180% attack and defense at the starter turn. Again, I still think that's low, but it's much better than 50%. He's getting an extra 30% right there. He has unconditional guard. He has unconditional 18% damage reduction. He gets an extra 180% attack when attacking when HP is 30% or more. And he launches an additional with a 70% chance of it being a super. He gets an additional 30% attack if the target's HP is 80% or less when attacking. He gets an additional 30% attack if the target's HP is 60% or less when attacking. And he gets an additional 50% attack when the target's HP is 40% or less when attacking. These can proc like mid-turn as well. It's when they're doing the attack. So if he's doing enough damage to like continually knock them down, you're just going to see his attack stats go through the roof. He also gets an extra 180% attack, or excuse me, 180% defense once he gets hit once within the turn. And then he launches an additional super attack within the same turn, and he gets an attack break after he receives an attack. So you throw this guy into slot 1, he gets hit 1 time, he's getting an extra 180% defense, he's launching a guaranteed super, and he's getting an attack break. That's a lot of versatility. This guy's going to be doing a lot of damage, so even if you weren't able to greed out a lot of stacks in space form, like you were forced to transform or whatever, he'll make up for it. He will make up for it. And again, you were stacking in his base form, so his stats right here are going to be quite impressive. And his new super attack isn't half bad either, greatly raising attack and defense for 1 turn, immense damage to the enemy, and he seals still. But this is kind of like the bread and butter of this character. When people think of this guy, they think of this. They think of his active skill, which can be performed the turn after this character receives 3 or more attacks in battle, or when facing only one enemy who has 80% or less HP. Massively raise attack temporarily, ultimate damage to the enemy, and then all attacks become crits within the turn. This guy can just melt through bosses. This also activates, so if the enemy is at 60% or less HP, all of this would activate. So you get an extra 60% attack. Obviously, you're stacking the base form, so by stacking the base form, this will do like way more devastating amount of damage. He's a great slot 1 unit. Again, he's just like Tech Ultimate Gohan, but better. I'm a huge fan of what this character does. I grossly underestimated this guy on initial release, because I wasn't thinking of like him stacking with guard and damage reduction, but this guy really does have that dog in him. Again, he's on a lot of teams. He can be a slot 1 for Broly, when Broly really does need like a slot 1. Super Saiyans, I mean, he's probably one of the best units on that. No, he probably is the best Super Saiyan. Next to Gogeta. I actually do think that this guy is probably better than Broly. Broly has a higher ceiling. This guy's more consistent, so I would say it's probably Gogeta than this guy. But like Pure Sans is always going to be good. Transformation Boost is very good. And the Battle of Wits, Gifted Warriors, like he's on some weaker categories as well. So if you're a new player and you happen to pull him back during, what was it, like March or May, whenever he dropped, I always forget when Sunday is. But if you were able to pull him back then, he can destroy pretty much any content solo-handedly. So yeah, I think he definitively fits the second place spot very handedly. So why do I think Boo is better? I think Boo will probably be potentially one of the best aging characters ever. Which may be a bold claim, but let's look at it. So Majin Buu Saga, we already talked about it earlier, but the extreme side of Majin Buu Saga is way better than the super class side. Because we're looking, you have characters like Super EZA, Kid Buu, you have Exchange Buu, who's probably the second or third best EZA in the game. This is actually a really good sub EZA if you're running a full Majin Power team. He's actually a great floater. This, if you're running a full Majin Power team, he's one of the best side units in the game. 70% chance to dodge, 70% chance to crit, launching guaranteed additionals, and he has a counter, and he survives KO attacks once within a turn. Super good. And then obviously you have like this guy who was, I think, absolutely eclipses him at this point. Again, it took me a little while to like fully admit it, but I do think that this guy eclipses what this guy is capable of doing. You have one of the best LRs in the game. I don't know if he's still top 10. He's probably teetering on like the top 15 at this point, but like right there you have a solid core. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's other options you could potentially run on here as well. Like you could run Super Buu. I think Super Buu has definitely fallen off quite a bit, but this team does have abilities to kind of protect him and pick up from his weaknesses. You do also have like Mr. Buu, who is really good. Can't really tank supers, but can tank any normal in the game. You can also throw in characters like Tech Ultimate Gohan, who actually has a 200% with him, and other such characters. So I feel like Buu is a much better leader for this. Sworn Enemies is just one celebration away from being meta. Like, if we get a really good Frieza or a really good Cell, who are, like, best units in the game, by leading this category, then that also just buffs him as well. Stored Figures is going to be one of these categories that's just kind of in limbo, because it's very odd which characters do and don't get on it. So, I don't know if Story Figures will ever be really good unless we get, like, an LR Tapion, and then we get a whole celebration around it. I don't think it'll get good outside of that. But Worldwide Chaos and Resurrect Warriors, those are pretty good 30% as well. But let's go ahead and look at his passive. So, gotta scroll down to make sure my fat head isn't blocking anything. He has an entrance animation where he recovers 10% HP at the start of the attacking turn for the rest of battle, and then an additional 10% 10% HP for his first 5 turns from his entry turns when there is another Majin Buu Saga category ally on the team from its entry turn. You do not need this. You don't need this. Buu will still be very good if you run him without Majin Buu Saga, which is very good, because we're looking at this. He's on 1.5 billion categories, so you don't need that at all. This guy is a much more, like, versatile unit than the Angel SSJ3, because SSJ3, like, he's missing out on guard, he's missing out on extra attacks and everything if you don't have a Majin Buu Saga. This guy, he's just missing out on a little bit of HP recovery. He'll survive without that. Again, credit where credit's due. I think that this is really low for a unit like this, only 150. I think that is, like, very bad. But he makes up for it in other ways. He gets an extra 150% attack and defense when he performs a super. He launches an additional that has a 70% chance of being a super. He guaranteed guards when HP is 50% or more at the start of turn. He recovers 10% HP at the end of turn if HP is 30% or less at the end of turn. He recovers an extra 10% HP. So he's always doing this, and then if you're below this threshold, you get an extra 10. Now, this is it. Revives with full HP when this character is KO'd. It's specifically this character. So he's one of these revive characters like Metal Cooler and so on, where specifically they have to die for them to get the buff. He survives KO attacks once per turn. He gets an extra 100% attack and defense. Guaranteed guard. Launches an additional super attack, and starting with the turn that he does revive, and then he recovers HP with sweet treats. Why do I think this guy is good? I actually think he's good because he doesn't revive. It's actually very hard to see this character's revive. Because he is so good, and his team is so good, that he's able to just, like, pretty comfortably cruise throughout the entire game. The only fight I think I have reliably seen this guy revive in, excuse me, is the Kid Buu red zone, when there's like 7 attacks in slot 1, you put this guy in slot 1 and he dies. That is like the only situation where I can see this guy like reliably getting this. So why do I think that he's the best? It's because he has this potential. Right now he is so strong without this that he can just kind of rule the game with just this. Again, he's ruling the game with very low HP right here. And again, he has this little condition right here where you have to be above 50% HP at the start of turn if you want him to guard. But just as it stands, even in the most difficult content, this guy's not getting caught. Like, yeah, he might be able to take some damage early on, or against some of these bigger boss supers, he'll definitely take some damage. But he is a defensive stacker with guard who recovers a bunch of HP, especially if you're running him, like, on his team. He does have all these extra abilities at his disposal, and again, he's destroying the game without needing this. So once the game gets a little bit more difficult, once we see a little bit of a, not necessarily power creep, but, you know, like, some power water rising, I suppose, you know, like the polar ice caps might be melting just a little bit. Once we start to see, you know, this guy getting some more pressure on his back, we'll start to see this part of his passive pop up more often. So if he's already destroying the game pretty reliably with just 300% of stats when supering and guard and, you know, defensive stacking and HP recovery, if we're already seeing him cooking with that, imagine how, like, well he will age once we start reliably seeing him with an extra 100% attack and defense, him having guaranteed guard and launching guaranteed supers. Just imagine the versatility and, like, the longevity of a character like this. I think that's actually very, very, very good. I do like what this guy is providing. And that's not all. That's not all. He actually still has an active skill, which can be performed the turn after he revives or turn 7 from the start of battle. So, turn 7 is a little bit rough if you are running this guy as a leader, because if I'm not mistaken, he works where if you're running him as a leader, only one of the units will get this buff and the other one does not. Starting from the turn on this character or an ally's revive skill is activated. Or an ally. No. So you could actually run this guy on Powerful Comeback. If you really wanted to, you could run this guy on Powerful Comeback with MUI, have MUI die, come back, and then boom. He would be in God mode. And then you would be able to reliably see God mode. I want to see if anyone's ever experimented with that. Just try to die as fast as possible to get this to proc. Now, if you're using him specifically to revive, he has to be the one to die. But he does also get full HP recovery, which is, like, the most we've seen since, like, the GT duo 2 years ago at this point. Which is pretty crazy to think about. And then, obviously, I don't know. He just feels very future-proofed. And this right here, where he massively raises attack, ultimate damage to the enemy, and then he has a Ghost Usher. He turns all key spheres into cookies as well, and he gets 12 key. Because cookies, they don't give you any key when you collect them, but he does recover HP with them. So you'll get some HP recovery. You'll be able to get a Ghost Usher for the turn. So that's 2 potential Ghost Ushers on your team. I don't know. He just feels future-proofed. He does. I think it'll be a very long time before Super Buu will outage every other unit on this team pretty handily, I'd think. I mean, this guy could be a threat over a year from now. And again, we're looking at it. You don't need to run him on his own team. You don't need to run him with other Majin Buu Saga characters. You can run him on Transformation Boos. You can run him on Sworn Enemies, Time Traveler, Worldwide Chaos, Legendary Existence, Kamehameha even. Powerful Comeback. I think Powerful Comeback could actually be like a interesting team build for him. I mean, you could run 23rd World Tournament Goku, or you could run SSBE. I think SSBE would be best. But you could genuinely run SSBE, AGL MUI, Tech MUI, like these guys, Tech Ultimate Gohan, and Buu. Like, this right here is a team that could pretty much destroy any fight in the game. And I don't think you're crazy for that. Like, yeah, he might not link the best with them, but he's offering, like, a lot of powers. I mean, technically, if you ran it with Tech Ultimate Gohan, he would get this. He would get that. He would actually get his intro off. So you would get that extra HP recovery for his first couple of turns. And again, he's just flooded with support as well. Like, this is probably, like, the second or third best EZA in the game. This is a phenomenal side banner unit. When this guy gets his sub EZA, he's actually not bad. I think he has to be run on tournament participants, though, which is a little bit unfortunate. Yeah, let's look at his links. Majin, the Innocence, Kamehameha, Infinite Regeneration, Fierce Battle, Wall Standing, Tall Arrival. Yeah, not the best link set, but he doesn't really need that. So, yeah. that is my list of all the Dokkan Fest TURs from this year. Let me know what you think of my list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm crazy for any of these? I feel like the two controversial ones are going to be Angel SSJ3 and Roshi. If I had to guess what the community would say, like, I think popular consensus would probably be, this is probably what most people would say. If I had to guess, like, I don't know. But that would be, my assumption. That would be what most people would say. But I'm pretty comfortable saying this. Like, everyone's going to agree on this. I think most people are going to agree that these guys are a little bit lower. Toppo might actually be a little bit lower because he might be underrated, because a lot of people do like, oh, he loses his damage reduction. But the ability to do what this guy does deep into a fight, I think matters way more. I do. And you just give him full dodge to, like, counteract his one and only weakness. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Again, do you disagree? Do you agree? Do you like what I said about all the characters when I was reading their passives? Let me know in the comment section below. But that is going to be all for this time, guys. I've been the SweetBear27. I'm a variety Twitch streamer and an up-and-coming YouTuber. Fuck. I fucked up my outro. We're gonna start over. But thank you guys so much for watching. I've been the SweetBear27. I'm a variety... God damn. I'm keeping this in. Alright, that is going to be all for this time, guys. I've been the SweetBear27. I'm a variety Twitch streamer and an up-and-coming PNG tuber trying to make it big in the world. I have a Twitter, a Twitch, a TikTok, and a YouTube, the links of which can all be found in the description of this video. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, share me around, and leave me a comment, positive, negative, or indifferent. I would love just any sort of interaction I can get from you guys. But that will be all for now. So, as always, I've been the SweetBear27, and I am signing off.